Hello and welcome to the International Webinar for Medicine and Health. Um, Before we begin, I would just like to acknowledge the Bedigal people who are the traditional custodians of the land in which we are presenting here today. I would like to extend that respect to elders past and present and also emerging, and extend that respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders joining us here today. My name is Cody Wem. I'm the Faculty Recruitment Officer for Medicine and Health. And whilst that is a bit of a title, it basically means my job is to ensure you have all of the answers to the questions you have about applying for any of our programs within medicine and health. So today's event, we will be taking you through, first up, we have Dr. Sean Kennedy, who will give us a overview of the program, as he is our program authority for the Bachelor of Medical Studies Doctor of Medicine program. Following that, we will have our medicine students. Before that, we will have Nick Fay, my colleague, to take us through all of the nitty-gritty details of the medicine application process, which I'm sure you all have lots and lots of questions on. Following Nick will be the student portion. So we've got with us Josh, Maverick and Janice, who are going to take us through the medicine student experience to give you the best idea of what studying medicine at UNSW is like. So on to UNSW, we'll give you just a bit of background. So if you've got ambition, bring it. We are 60,000 students strong and we have over 300 degrees. So we're a really strong university in not only coursework, but also research, and we have really strong links to industry. So we have one central work integrated learning team. So that's a bit of university speak, but essentially they are our link to industry. They're our link to the workforce and the one team across all of our faculties who are here purely to help you get integrated with those industries. So here's what we bring. We are a top 50 university. We are ranked currently 43rd in the world for medicine. So we have jumped up a couple of spots in the last year, which is absolutely amazing. And it speaks volumes of the quality of our program. We're also #1 institution attended by startup founders, which is really interesting as well. Our medicine and health faculty is a world leader in medical research. So anything from cancer to non-communicable diseases, we are at the forefront leading that research worldwide. And we are the most in-demand degree in New South Wales, so the state in which our program is run for the last 5 years running. So we have a really, really great and popular degree here, and we hope you'll enjoy it as much as we do. Next up, we have Sydney, which is where we are live from tonight. We are Australia's global city, so it is the financial hub of Australia. It's really where the business and intellectual capital come together, and we're home to more global firms than any Australian city. We were voted best city in terms of the quality of living in Australia. I mean, if you look at the harbour in that picture, you just can't go wrong. But also for international students, we have an immensely diverse cohort living in Sydney. So we have 31.7% of our population was born overseas, and we have over 250 languages spoken in Sydney. So not only are you joining Australia's global city, you are joining an incredibly diverse and inclusive population here with us today. Apologies, my lighting has just, oh, there we go, and we're back on. So here with Medicine and Health, we are preparing you for the future of health. So we have a number of programs in both clinical settings and non-clinical settings. So we have everything from our exercise physiology program, we have a Bachelor of Psychology or clinical optometry, and then on the other side, the future of health looks a little bit different in those non-clinical programs. So we've got, biomedical engineering, international public health, medical science, and vision science. And really excitingly, we will be launching some more health professional programs, so some allied health style programs that will be coming in 2023. Unfortunately, we can't say too much about them just yet, but the launch will be coming very, very soon. So we have Dr. Sean Kennedy joining the virtual stage to take us through all things the medicine program. Over to you, Sean.
Thank you, Katie. Hello, everyone. I'd also like to extend my welcome. We can't see you, but if we could, I'd say it's great to see you. But really pleased that you can join in tonight or watch this session later. I'm also coming from the land of the Bidjigal people, the local Aboriginal people. My role is the program director of the medicine program. I'm actually a paediatrician. I work with children. I work at Sydney Children's Hospital, and that's where I'm coming from, and that's one of Australia's leading children's hospitals, and it's right next door to the main campus of UNSW. And I'll talk more about that, but that's one of the great things about our medicine course at UNSW, this very close integration between leading hospitals and the university campus. Our medicine program is 1 degree, but it's actually two degrees. If you study the 6-year course in UNSW, you'll graduate with a Bachelor of Medical Studies, a BMed, and a Doctor of Medicine, the MD. That'll be after your names, BMed, MD. And that's because we have this 6-year course which takes students generally straight from school. So school leavers come to university, do the full 6 years and graduate as ready to go into the workforce as a doctor. And I'll say from the outset that even most of our overseas graduates, if they want to, are usually successful in finding an internship placement within Australia after graduation. But before you get there, you've got 6 years of study. And the 6 years of study, we've broken into 3 phases, each phase being 2 years. And the reason we've done that is because we realize that before you get to being a doctor, there's a lot of learning to do. And everything you learn in the early years, even from the first week, you will build on as you move through the course. And how you learn will gradually change as well as what you learn. Because we realize we're taking you generally from school, where when you're learning in the high school environment, you have a particular ways of learning. You're reading a lot, listening to a lot of teaching, trying to memorize a lot of things, cramming in as much knowledge, developing skills, whether it's in sciences or the arts or languages or music. But the skills that you need at university are different. And so we take you through those 6 years. We're teaching you and helping you acquire those skills that you need to learn, as well as the skills and knowledge to become a doctor. So in the first phase, in years 1 and 2, it's based around, we call it scenario-based learning. So very straight away from the outset, there's a clinical connection. So we don't just start you learning about aspects of the human body, the knee bones connected to the shin bone, the anatomy and basic sciences. We teach you that, but at the same time, we're incorporating it with real life situations, with the sort of situations that you'll see once you graduate as a doctor. And this is what we call the scenarios. So you start with a clinical scenario, and the teaching is in groups. So you learn in groups, the scenario groups. And that's really, really important. It's really important and valuable for you just to have that support, getting to know each other, making friendships. But also it's critically important because once you graduate and work as a doctor, you'll be working in teams. And one of the structure of our program is we have something called the graduate capabilities. And that's what we expect, that once you graduate, you have achieved a certain standard in all these capabilities. And those capabilities include a capability called teamwork. So we teach you straight away and help you learn how to be a good team player. And that's in phase 1. So you're learning basic sciences, incorporating it with clinical skills. After you get assessed along the way, and at the end of second year, there's bigger exams, and if you pass those, you move into third year, which is the beginning of phase 2. And third year, it switches. So phase 1 is mostly on the campus, so within the university learning. Sometimes, like once every 2 weeks, you'll be in a hospital doing some learning, but most of it's on the campus. But then in second years, it flips around, and most of the time you spend in hospitals and clinical settings. So of the 5 days a week, you'll spend 3 days in the hospital, seeing patients, being taught on the wards, having tutorials with people who are like me, who are academics, teachers, but also practicing doctors. So you'll be learning these clinical skills and at the same time building on those basic science skills you've learned in years 1 and 2. That's the third year. The fourth year I'll speak about more in the next slide, but it's a specialised year where you'll do research. So it's our research year. Once you've finished the fourth year, you move to fifth and sixth year, which is phase 3, which is very much more that traditional, almost apprenticeship model. It's much more than that, but it's where you spend basically all your time in hospitals and other clinical settings like general practice clinics and community clinics and teaching hospitals. And so you'll spend a period of time where you'll be attached again to someone like me learning pediatrics for 8 weeks. You'll spend 8 weeks in a surgical term, and that surgical term may be orthopedics, neurosurgery, cardiac surgery, GIT surgery. And so during that period of time, you'll be doing ward rounds with your supervisors and with the junior doctors that work with them. If you're doing surgery, you'll go to surgery and see what happens in the theatres. We go into clinics and helping patients, seeing patients. So it's a very hands-on period in that final 2 years. And then at the end of it, there's the final exams when you graduate. As I said, including just prior to graduation, a period of time where we call the preparation for internship, where it's after you've passed the exams, there's a period of time where you're much more focused on actually learning the day-to-day skills of coping as an intern and the work that you'll need to do. So that's the 6 years, but that fourth year is that research year. And during that research year, you'll have your own project, hence the name Independent Learning Project. You have a research project that'll be supervised with a researcher who is associated with the UNSW. That researcher may be someone who works in a lab doing cutting edge basic science research on cancer cells, on in vitro fertilization, potentially even on animal studies. Or it may be a researcher who's spending time in the hospital and involved in research on real people in clinical trials. It may be a researcher who's using big data, what we call big data. So data sets and interpreting a whole lot of information to help us learn more about illness, health and the medical system. Or it might be someone who's working in public health, trying to help the populations that are at risk. So vast array of projects that you could do during that year. And you have the opportunity to choose the project that you'd like, choose the project that suits you. And at the end of that year, you'll submit a report. And during the year, there's steps along the way to help you get to that stage. And also during that year, there are some courses that you would do. We have this very exciting course called Value-Based Healthcare. So you're not just out of the clinical world for a year, you're still connected to clinical medicine while you're doing research. But at the end of it, you have a much better understanding, not only of how to do research, but how to use research. Because as a doctor all the time, we're using research. We have to keep up to date. We have to interpret new studies, understand how or why new drugs work. And if we don't understand research, you really have a lot of difficulty doing that. So next slide, Cody. So the beauty of medicine, and one of the things that I really like about medicine, there's so much I like about being a doctor. Part of it is being able to do what I do in terms of educating the next group of doctors. But the other part is that I don't stop learning. I have to keep up with new knowledge, new skills, new developments all the time. So medicine is a vocation where you'll have lifelong learning. And we teach you how to be a lifelong learner during the 6 years. So usually you'll do the 6 years of medicine. If you stay in Australia, there's 3 years internship and residency, and before you can then specialise. And specialisation might be in paediatrics, might be in general practice or any of the other specialties that I'll mention. But whatever you go into in field in medicine, you may choose to go into more of a research field, non-clinical field, but whatever, you're just to be a lifelong learner. So next slide, please. So what are some of those careers? So we have a general degree. Once you graduate with our degree, you've done those first couple of years in the hospital, you can then go into any field in medicine. General practice, you can be a physician, and the physician could be a cardiologist, a gastroenterologist, a neurologist, any of the ologists, surgeons, as I mentioned, any sort of surgery, women's health, psychiatry, or the sort of specialties where you're dealing less face-to-face with patients, but you're helping patients by analysing X-rays and MRIs and ultrasounds and radiology, or giving anaesthetics to patients, interpreting pathology tests, or even, if we go to the next slide, even some of these things that have become to the priority in recent years during the pandemic, becoming a public health physician. These are the people who have been guiding us through the pandemic. They're medical graduates. As I mentioned, you could go into research, you could go into hospital management or health management, policy, or you could focus just on medical education. But most of us continue to do medical clinical work as well as doing medical education. So as I said, our degree is 6 years. We usually take you straight from school. So what's different between our undergraduate degree and those degrees, which many of the other medical degrees in Australia now are postgraduate? So as I explained, the 6 years, we're building you and building on blocks all along the way and helping you learn all along the way to develop the knowledge and skills that you need at the end. So you're learning to study as you learn medicine. Our medicine is taught on campus at university, here or also on campus in rural sites around New South Wales, or places like where I am, Sydney Children's Hospital, other hospitals very close to the university, like Prince of Wales, hospitals that aren't very much further away. They're all based in Sydney and easy to get to. And as Cody said, Sydney's a wonderful place, and you can live in a great part of Sydney and then just, a short commute get to the hospital that you're learning in. Next slide, Cody. So actually that's my last slide. And so I'll hand back to Nick now, who will talk about how you can get into our course. And I look forward to seeing you once you do get here.
Thanks so much, Sean. I can see we've already got quite a number of questions coming in now. So just a reminder to pop your questions in the chat, and we'll either get to them at the end, part of our Q&A section, or they'll be answered in the chat. Now for the nitty-gritty admissions details, we're going to hand over to my colleague, Nick. Thanks, Nick.
Brilliant. Thank you, Cody. Look, it's wonderful to be here tonight. As both Cody and Sean have said already, lots and lots of information that we're going to cover. And really now is our chance to dive into the nitty-gritty of how to apply for the program. We've had a few questions already around the admission side of things and what that looks like. So let's do a bit of a whirlwind tour of all those questions. And I'll try and cover, I can see I've got the questions on the right-hand side of my screen. I'll try to cover off quite a few of those as we go through. So in terms of how to apply, there's quite a few different steps that you need to keep in mind. And I'll say we're going to send an email out after this event as well, to all of you, which has a whole bunch of really useful links in it, which I'd encourage you to have a read through very closely, because it covers off some of our how to apply information, takes you as well through what you can expect when you go through that transition into our program, and all the support services that are on offer as well. So in terms of how to apply, there's 2 separate applications. One of these is to our medicine application portal. This allows us to capture a whole bunch of extra information that we need to assess your application. And then the second depends on the qualification that you're studying. So most of the students who are joining us online are going to be applying via our UNSW Apply Online portal. But some of you might be applying via UAC International if you're completing your Year 12 studies in Australia. If we jump through to the next slide, this gives you a really top-level overview of the timeline that you can expect. So you can see here, and we're going to break down all these individual components very shortly, but there's sitting the admissions test. Your results must be available by the 30th of November at the very latest. Applying via, as we said, UAC International or Apply Online. Submitting that medicine application portal component as well. And then there's an interview component, which we'll again dive into momentarily, but those interviews are run from April through to mid-January. English language requirements are one of the key components that we're looking for, and there's a few different selection criteria that we'll talk about, but there are minimum English language requirements that you have to meet. So on screen are some of the commonly accepted English language requirements that we have, such as, for example, a 7 in IELTS, a 94 in TOEFL. For a full list of requirements, though, you can see there's a link on the screen there. I encourage you to jump into that link or just type in UNSW Medicine, English language requirements, and you'll be able to see all the qualifications that we accept as a way of proving your English language proficiency. There's 3 selection criteria that we look at to assess students who are coming into the program. And in terms of, because one of the questions I can see that's come through is how many applications do we receive every year and how many places are available? And look, on the domestic front, we receive about 3,500 to 4,000 applications every year. And for domestic students, there's around 200 places or just under 200 places available. On the international side of things, which is more relevant for this context, we typically receive around 700 to 1,000 applications every year for just under 100 places that are available. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of the competitiveness of the program. It is a very competitive program. And it indeed has been the most in-demand undergraduate degree here in New South Wales for the last 5 years. But there's no reason why you can't be putting your best foot forward and applying and diving into what is an absolutely wonderful program. And so keep in mind these selection criteria as we dive through, and we give a bit of an indication of what is required. So there's the academic merit component, there's the admissions test, so your ISAT or your UCAT ANZ, and we'll talk about that in more detail, and then the interview component. And so a lot of students ask us, look, do we take an average of all these 3 components? How are they assessed? And look, really, you have to perform highly in all 3 of them. That is our best advice. So there's an algorithm on the back end where we combine your academic merit and your admissions test results together to rank applicants. The most competitive applicants are then given an interview offer, and then we combine all 3 of those factors, so your academic merit, your admissions test, and your interview, in order to assess your competitiveness for the program. So you really have to be performing highly across all 3 of those factors, because it's not an average. We're looking for the most competitive applicants overall, and you've heard the number of applicants that are applying. So it is about performing really well in all of those different factors. Now, if we jump to the first factor, that's academic merit. So look, we publish the minimum requirements for consideration, but keep in mind that these are indeed just the minimum requirements that we're looking for. Indeed, entry can be much, much higher than this, and that again depends on the competitiveness each year of all the applicants that are applying for the program. But it's a minimum of a 96 ATAR. Now, for those of you who are joining internationally, the ATAR is the Australian Tertiary Admissions Rank. It's the score that we use here in New South Wales and more broadly around Australia. And so you're seeing on the screen here some of those equivalencies to our 96 ATAR. What I would encourage you to do, though, is to jump onto our Bachelor of Medical Studies, Doctor of Medicine webpage. Again, we'll be sending the links out, and that gives you an idea of, depending on the country that you're joining us from and the qualification you're studying, what those equivalencies look like. But as I need to stress, it is a minimum of a 96 ATAR, and indeed the score to get in and to be competitive for an interview can be much higher than that. So we encourage you to do your very best, and we'll talk about some of the pathways as well momentarily that other students have taken to get into medicine. So the only other thing to say on this slide, there's no prerequisite subjects. We assume that you've achieved a band 4 in English. Now, again, this is a band 4 in the equivalency of doing a New South Wales higher school certificate qualification. So for most of you, it's having reasonable proficiency in English, because communication is really important to be able to research effectively, engage in clinical settings effectively. And we also recommend studying chemistry. It's not a prerequisite. We're not going to look at the subjects you've studied previously, but we encourage students to, again, be performing well in English, but also to consider doing chemistry if you're a little bit earlier on in your schooling and you've still got the opportunity to choose which subjects you're going to do. On the admissions test side of things, as we said, you can sit the ISAT or the UCAT-ANZ. We're going to unpick these in a little bit more detail shortly. You can choose to sit one or the other. So the ISAT is held in May, August, and November. The UCAT is held in July, and we really advise you to take the earliest possible test that's available. This is to ensure that your results are available by the deadline of November 30th. We do give out interviews, though, on a rolling basis. So we are assessing students on a rolling basis, and hence it's really important that you are sitting the earliest possible test, because it maximizes your chance of being considered as early as possible. Register for the admissions test, though, even if you're not sure about applying for medicine. We often get students reaching out to us to say, look, I'm thinking about a few different options. Medicine might be a career I'm thinking about. And look, in your final year of high school, for example, you might change your mind about what it is that you want to study. So it's great to always keep all of those different options open. So by registering and sitting the admissions tests, you're keeping that door open. You might not go down that route in the end, but at least you're giving yourself that option. If we move to the next slide, we're going to talk about the UCAT-ANZ. So this is the university's clinical aptitude test. Here's the scores on the screen. This is a bit of an indication of what scores we would expect will put you in a broadly competitive range for 2023 entry. We're looking at the 2022 results on the screen there. You can see the lowest overall score considered for an interview is in the 50th percentile. So the median score last year was 3,139. The lowest score was 2,890. What's really important to know with the UCAT-ANZ is that there's no medical questions. It's a fully computer-based test. It's not paper-based, and it's really designed to test your broad capability and problem-solving skills and logical skills. We're looking for well-rounded students, as Sean was saying before, and it's about really being able to capture across a bunch of different assessment criteria here. Hence why we look at your academic results, having an admissions test as well, and then ultimately the interview. We're looking for well-rounded students who are passionate about medicine and are going to become amazing clinicians, but are equally lifelong learners, because it is a big commitment to pursue a medical program and to pursue a career in medicine. And so really this allows us to get a more well-rounded picture of who you are. You can do the UCAT-ANZ at the Pearson VUE testing centres. There's multiple sessions throughout July and also early August, and the assessment test is offered across Australia and overseas. So 5 different sections that you'll do as part of the test. We don't currently look at the situational judgment components. That may change. Our admissions team within medicine are constantly reviewing and ensuring that our assessment processes are optimal and efficient. So we may look at that down the track, but at the moment we only look at the first 4 sections. And the really important thing I want to land on this slide is that we don't recommend any third-party preparation courses. So probably I'd say the second most common question we get from students who are interested in applying for medicine, second only to what is the score that I need to get in, is should I work with a college or a preparation company to prepare for the UCAT-ANZ or to prepare for the ISAT, or even to prepare for an interview? And look, we really don't recommend that. It often can be detrimental to a student's performance. Really, we recommend you go onto the UKANZ website, jump onto the ISAT website as well. There's free practice questions that are available. There's some helpful resources as well. Go through and do those practice exams. That sets you up really well. And we'll talk as well about the interview component in a moment and how we recommend you prepare for that. Jumping over to the ISAT, so this is the International Student Admissions Test. You can see the scores on the screen when we jump to the next slide. There we go. You can see the scores on the screen. We have recently changed the minimum score for consideration. It's gone up slightly this year based on previous intakes results. So that the lowest score considered for interview eligibility is 165. Again, with this, we really recommend that you're applying for the earliest possible ISAT exam that you are eligible to sit. Moving to the interview now, and this is where we get lots of questions from students around what does the interview look like? Some other universities run multi-mini interviews and a whole bunch of different styles of interview. Ours is really informal. It's 2 interviewers, usually a doctor and a representative from the community, and we're really looking to get to know you as a person. So we're looking at your communication skills, we're looking at your maturity, your motivations for pursuing a career in medicine, and it's really a structured interview designed to help us get a holistic picture of what you're going to bring, not only to the program, but also the medical profession more broadly. So we are looking for that passion, of course, but as I said before, the maturity as well. This is a lifelong commitment. Sean was talking about that continuum of learning as well, and that it is really about knowing that this is going to be a long haul, a very rewarding career, but we're looking for those students who know that this is something they really want to pursue and they're going to become phenomenal clinicians, but also potentially great academics, great researchers, and great advocates for health and medicine more broadly. So we really don't recommend interview coaching. It is one of those things where, because the representatives who are conducting the interviews, they do hundreds of these interviews every year, and they can tell straight away if you've got pre-prepared responses, if you're not being authentic. And really, we're looking for that authenticity. We're looking to find out what makes you unique, because again, you're going to be interviewing against, as you've seen here, several hundred other people. We're not looking for just that perfect pre-prepared response. We want to know what makes you tick, what you're going to bring personally to the program. So just be honest. That means that there's nothing really you need to do to prepare. I mean, all I would recommend to students is just have a bit of a think about what your motivations are, what's led you up to this point, what you want to get out of the program. Do some research and show that you're engaged, that you want to be a part of the program. We're going to hear from some of our phenomenal current students later on about some of the incredible experiences they've had. Doing a bit of research and knowing what you're in for can definitely help so that you're prepared for the interview. But as we say, there's really nothing formally that you need to do to be ready for it. You just got to make sure that you click on the link at the right time if you're doing a video interview, and make sure that you turn up. We're going to jump now to a detailed application timeline. This is probably one of those slides where I would recommend you take a screenshot. If you don't panic. In the email that we send out to you later on this week, you're going to have a link to our medicine application timeline for international applicants, and it covers all of this in detail. Worth taking a screenshot though of this, highlighting some of those key dates so that you book in for your assessment tests. You're filling out the medicine application portal. Important to note that students do often forget to apply via the medicine application portal. Again, there's those 2 components. You've got to apply via UAC International or the UNSW Apply Online, and you need to submit that medicine application portal application. And students do often forget, which means that you're not going to be eligible. So you need to make sure that you're taking note of those key dates and definitely keeping a close eye on them. As I mentioned as well, we run interviews throughout the year, so they're actually held from April. We run these all the way through to January next year, but make sure you're applying as early as you possibly can, because it's maximizing your chances and ensuring that we're able to work methodically through those applications. To talk finally a little bit about alternative pathways, look, we've stressed that it's a competitive program, it's a phenomenal program to be part of, but there's so many pathways to get into a career in medicine, and we know that just around the world. I mean, here in Australia, the government regulates the number of places we can give out for medical programs. That's the same for a lot of the other institutions here in Australia, and indeed, I'm sure it's a very similar situation in many countries around the world. it means that getting into medicine is competitive. I mean, part of the reason why those places are regulated means that there's positions available for students to go on and do internship years, and it's regulating the supply and demand of clinicians going into the workforce. But we really recommend that if you're passionate about medicine, there is a pathway. You've just got to find out which is going to be the right pathway for you. So I'd recommend, first of all, that you sit the ISAT and the UKNZ again next year. So every year that you reapply to our program, and again, you can reapply every subsequent year to our degree. There's no kind of limitation on that. You can keep reapplying, but you will need to make sure you resit that assessment test. So it could be the ISAT, could be the UKNZ. Resit that every year. It means you'll get very good at whichever of those two tests you select. Hopefully you get very, very good at that very, very quickly, or very sick of the test. It could be one or the other, or both. But sit that again and reapply is the first piece of advice. You can also get a head start on another degree. So we will consider your results in at least 1 year worth of full-time study as part of your selection rank. You've got to meet minimum entry requirements. So you can see there again, you still have to, in your schooling qualification, meet a minimum of a 96 ATAR or equivalent. And in your tertiary studies, your university study, a weighted average mark, which is equivalent to a UNSW 70. So if you're meeting those minimum components, what we then do is we actually pick the better of the two. So if you did well in secondary school, but you've done phenomenally well in university, you've just got high distinctions all around, or you've been getting lots of distinctions, and you're really applying yourself to your studies, then that's going to put you in phenomenal stead to apply for our program. And so we'll actually look just at your university results, provided you've met those minimum requirements. So you still need to sit the UKNZ or the ISAT every year, but it's another option. So I really recommend, if you don't get in straight away, don't panic. Choose a degree that you're passionate about. We don't look at the degree itself. You could do, and indeed we see students coming in from law, from business, from art and design. We see them coming from every kind of background because we're looking for your academic potential and your passion, not just what you've actually been doing in terms of the subject matter of that program. So a lot of students ask us as well, should I do a medical science program, for example? And look, I mean, a lot of students will do that because they are passionate about medical research, and that's a great reason to choose it. But it's not something we're going to look at overtly. So it's not a reason to choose medical science. Do it because you love medical science, and it's another pathway you're thinking about. Another option for students is to apply for postgraduate medical programs. As Sean was saying before, our program is undergraduate entry. So it's a Bachelor of Medical Studies combined with that Doctor of Medicine program, which is offered at a number of other universities around Australia and around the world. But it's undergraduate entry. So you're coming in, and students who, even if they've completed a bachelor's degree elsewhere, they still need to come in and start that degree from the beginning and do that 6-year program. So really, you can keep applying for our program after you start a degree, and you might finish your undergraduate degree, you might be doing another program elsewhere, but then after that you can apply for postgraduate medical programs at other universities, like our colleagues down the road at the University of Sydney, the University of Melbourne, Queensland, many other institutions that offer just that Doctor of Medicine or a postgraduate medical program. Equally, you can consider trying other clinical and medicine-related careers. So Cody spoke about some of the others earlier that we offer here at the University of New South Wales. Everything from doing biomedical engineering to working in international public health and making a difference, not necessarily on that one-to-one clinical layer, although you could do clinical optometry, for example, and make that one-to-one impact, but often working to impact the health and longevity of populations more broadly, and that can be a equally rewarding career pathway for people to go down. And you'll find that when you start a degree and you start getting involved in everything that university has to offer, and we're going to hear from our current students very shortly about what that looks like, it's going to open up many different career pathways that even right now you might not even be thinking about. So look, hopefully that's answered a lot of the nitty-gritty admission style questions that you've got. I can see lots of other questions that have come through, so we'll answer some more at the very end of the session. But I really encourage you to think about what motivates you for medicine. But if you're really driven and you want to be there, it might take you 3, 4, 5 different attempts to get into the medicine program. And we've seen that with some of our students. But I can tell you they often become some of the best clinicians and doctors because they have that passion, they have that resilience. And it puts them in great stead for their career afterwards. So, be driven by that. But keep in mind that there's so many other pathways out there as well. So look, that's me done for tonight. I'm going to throw back to Cody, who's now going to give us a rundown on the current student side of things by throwing to a few of our phenomenal medical students who are here today. So Cody, over to you.
Thanks so much, Nick. Now, I hope everyone got all of that. We understand that it was a lot of information, but it is all available on our website. And as Nick said, we will be sending out an email with that information and the link to this recording of the session, so you'll be able to catch up on all of that and take screenshots as needed. So now we are fortunate enough to have the president of our MedSoc, so our Medical Student Society here at UNSW. So welcome to the virtual stage to Josh Lowinger.
Thanks so much, Cody, and thanks so much everyone for joining today. Very excited to hopefully have lots of you joining our med community very soon. So I'm Josh, I'm the president of our UNSW Medical Society, also known as MedSoc, which is the student society for all 1,600 students at UNSW Medicine. So we'll go to the next slide, please, Cody. So I'll very quickly talk through some of the things that are really special and unique about the medicine program. So when you guys come into the medicine program very soon, you start in phase 1. So this is first and second year. And this is just a great way of getting you guys into the program, getting to know so many people. It's a really, really close-knit cohort. And I would honestly say the best community I've ever been a part of. As Sean mentioned, you come into things called scenario groups and you're integrated with first years and second years. So you learn from your peers, and then the year after you get to repay the favor and teach them. You also get put into one of our 4 medicine colleges where you'll do things like College Cup. You go to things like Med Camp. We have things like Med Ball. So there's really so much going on to help you settle in. We'll go to the next slide, please. And you have these case integration and clinical integration, and you're really getting that early clinical experience from day 1, and you're in hospital within your first term of being at uni. I remember my first time going into hospital and just thinking, wow, this is honestly the dream degree. It's like such a privilege to be able to see patients, to talk to them, to learn from them. So cannot rate highly enough the learning experiences that we get. And as I mentioned, you get your peer mentors. It's an extremely supportive environment, academically, socially. There's so much breadth. And as you can see from this lovely collage we've put together, just some of the diverse range of events you can attend and experience. You can see us in our Superman suits at the top at our National AMSA convention, connecting with medical students across the whole country. You can see our events like Scrub Crawl, our med show, which is hundreds of med students coming together. If you guys play any instruments, if you sing, if you act, or if you dance, you might be surprised, but medicine students can dance, even if you don't think you can. And down the bottom, you can see some of our College Cup events as well. So just really a lot going on. We have more than 300 events every year. And you can see here, I'm currently a 4th year, but this is when we were first years. At the end of the year, our cohort super tight. You will know every single person in your cohort, but phase 1 really establishes that strong foundation for medicine and engenders that really powerful sense of UNSW medicine community. Now we'll move on to phase 2. So in your 3rd year, as Sean mentioned, you're put in hospital 3 days a week and you're learning from experts. You're with patients every day. You become really comfortable in hospital and it becomes like a second home. You can also go rural, which is a great experience. You go really close with the community there. And as Sean mentioned again, in 4th year, you have that ILP or honours year, which really sets you a step ahead of other people when it comes to things like going for internships, specialties, because you graduate with a publication in any area you're interested in. You can pick literally anything, and it's absolute experts in the field you're dealing with. And then finally, phase 3, in 5th and 6th year, you're in hospital full time. You're basically ready to become a doctor. It's just giving you that experience. At the end of 5th year, you also get to do an elective term. So a lot of people will do maybe 1 in Australia, potentially in a rural community, or maybe 1 overseas internationally. You can even do it in your home country as well. So you can get experience wherever you want. And then at the end of 6th year, you graduate feeling really prepared and ready for the workforce. So a little bit about student life. We have a student society called ARC at UNSW, which oversees more than 300 different clubs and societies. So if you like dogs, you can join the Dog Society. If you like cooking, you can join the Cooking Society. If you like both, there's even a society where you can like cook treats for your dogs. Like there's literally every society you can imagine, and you can even start your own. It's so diverse. And then, yeah, here you can see on some of the sports you can get involved in, arts and crafts. You can go to one of the colleges. A lot of international students end up going to one of our colleges here, where you'll just make so many friends, have so much fun. And finally, our MedSoc, our student society. Of the 1,600 medical students, 400 of those are MedSoc volunteers every year. In fact, I'd say most students become a MedSoc volunteer at some point in their medical degree. There's so many things, from our events team to our academics team to our equity team. You'll hear a bit more from a couple of our international students soon, but we have our international officers. During COVID, we had offshore officers. So really just making sure that every person from every background is represented and being supported in every way. As I mentioned, we have a lot of representation and support. There's a huge focus, not only from students, but from faculty as well, on mental health and well-being. We're really lucky to be super close with our faculty, attending meetings with them all the time, and they really listen to what students want. And we support you guys with assessments. We hold like end of course tutorials, curriculum development. We connect you with doctors, give you, research opportunities and more. Clinical learning, and as I said, equity, diversity, inclusivity, so that every single person feels a part of the community. We have our performing arts groups, MedShow and the Medical Music Society, which you can see here. And then on the next slide. Next I'll hand over to Maverick. But before I do, I just want to say thank you guys so much for tuning in, and really hope to see you next year. You're welcome to message myself or any of the other students anytime if we can help you out with anything.
Thanks so much for that whirlwind tour, Josh. It sounds like an incredible program. And now to share some more light on the program, we have the president of the UNSW Singapore MedSoc, Maverick, over to you.
Yep. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today at this event. So just some self-introduction. My name is Maverick. I'm a third-year medical student. I'm also the president of the UNSW Singapore MedSoc. So just to clarify, the UNSW Singapore MedSoc, we are an independently run society that's affiliated with the UNSW MedSoc that Josh is the president of. So we are affiliated to Singapore Students Association as well, of UNSW, and the Singapore Medical Society of Australia and New Zealand, which is also under the Singapore Medical Association. So next slide, please. So I'll just give, the next slide is just a snapshot of my life here in UNSW. So for some context, the last 2 years, due to the COVID pandemic, I had my first 2 years of medical school back in Singapore. I was here in 2020 for about a couple of months before we all returned back to Singapore because of the whole COVID lockdown and all. So I truly only had my real student life experience this year when I returned to Sydney about 3 months ago. So yeah, just this slide here is just a quick snapshot of what happened in the last 2 to 3 months. So on the bottom left side, all these people in this lecture theatre are actually our freshies, our year one Singaporeans, and not in picture is me. I'm actually giving the talk and hosting the event. It's a welcome event for our year one freshies where they get to meet their mentors and also just have like a culture group for them to meet the fellow Singaporeans here in the UNSW. So on the right side here, it's me on my first day in hospitals with my clinical partner, Kimberly. And on the top left side is where we had a tutorial in our clinical school run by a year 6 senior student. So I would say that the experience here in UNSW has been quite great for me, especially the last 2 years when we had to do our course online back in Singapore, and faculty was actually really helpful with us, was very flexible, and I managed to do my medical studies without any disruption. So I guess overall, I would say UNSW is a perfect choice if you are looking for somewhere to study medicine outside of Singapore. Yep, just to hand things back to Cody.
Thanks so much, Maverick. And now we are into the Q&A component. So get excited for all of your questions to be answered. But before we kick off, we actually have another student joining us. So we have Janice Hui with us, she's a third-year medicine student, and she's actually one of our Future Students Medicine ambassadors. So I'll hand over to Janice to introduce herself before we kick off the Q&A.
Yep, thanks, Cody, and thanks everyone who's joining us today. So my name is Janice, and I'm currently a third-year medical student. And I'm also an international student, and I'm actually from Hong Kong.
Great, thank you to Janice. Okay, so let's kick off with our questions. Let's start with one for you, Josh. We spoke earlier on the Independent Learning Project, or honours. Can you tell us a bit about what your honours project is on? How are you finding it so far? How is it different to the other years of medicine?
Yeah, thanks, Cody. Great question. It's definitely a year to look forward to because you can pursue whatever your passion is. So for me, I'm very interested in oncology or cancer research. And I'm also interested in potentially looking into like ophthalmology or eyes, dermatology, skin. So what I'm doing is a bit of a project that combines all of those, looking at uveal melanoma, which is cancer of the eye. So I've actually just come straight from a lab today where we've taken some samples from patients. We're looking and we're analyzing those and seeing if we can, come up with treatments for those patients because there's currently no treatment for that disease. And I think it's a great example of, the sort of difference you can make in medicine and even just during your time in the medicine degree. So I think that's the thing I'd enjoy the most about it, but also just the freedom it gives you to, spend time in fourth year with your medicine friends as well.
Yeah, perfect. That sounds so interesting. I can tell from all of the students that we speak to through my role here at UNSW, it's an incredibly diverse range of projects that you can get involved in, and it's really sort of self-driven. And as you were saying, Josh, it's what you're passionate about, and being able to combine those has been awesome. So let's move on to the next question. I might throw this next question, it's a bit of a curly one, over to Sean. What happens if you don't pass the exam after phase 1?
That's not a curly one, because some students don't, and some students don't pass exams all along the way. But you don't get booted out. You don't get sort of sent back home. My job, one of my jobs, I see my job as this program authority, program director, is to make sure that every student who starts in first year graduates. So it's not like we cull students along the way. We want everyone to graduate. So there are supplementary exams at different stages for students who don't pass. There's extra support for students who are having difficulties for whatever reason. There's special consideration for students who have difficulties, particularly because of health issues. So, we have, as Nick explained, pretty complex and in some ways complex but stringent selection processes. We get a lot of students applying, so we really think that we can select the best potential doctors. And once we've selected them, we have faith in our selection process. So then it's our job to teach them, to get them to graduate. It's not our job to fail them. Thanks.
Thanks, Sean. Completely agree. And there are some amazing support services that medicine provide students, not only through the MedSoc, as Josh and Maverick were saying, but also through the university itself. I might throw over to Maverick now. How was learning online? How did you enjoy learning online versus maybe being here in Sydney? How is it different? Can you tell us about that?
I guess learning online had a lot of flexibility because we just had to open our computers and attend lessons from remote instead of having to actually travel to classes and faculty. So I guess it was quite a good experience. Faculty made it really simple for us. We just had to follow a link online just to attend the class, and lectures were all also online as well. So and if you miss something, you can actually rewatch the recordings. So it was pretty like great for me, to be honest. It was quite smooth. It was easy.
Great, thanks, Maverick. I might throw the next question to Janice. How was your interview? What's UNSW looking for in the interviews? How did you prepare? Any advice for students before they begin their interview process?
Yep, so the interview was pretty late for me, which was I think in November for me in the year, and it was just a panel interview, and the interview was really nice and friendly. They basically asked me some questions like, oh, why you're like thinking of joining UNSW and why you're like kind of passionate about medicine. And I think the aim of like the interview is actually just really getting to know more about you, like your passions, your aims, your goals, and what you want to achieve throughout like the degree. And one advice that I'll give you is like be natural and you'll be fine. Just answer all questions with the best effort you can give out, and it's all right, I think.
Great, thanks, Janice. I might throw this next. Actually, I'm going to run through a few of our questions that we have received based on some nitty-gritty admissions questions. So I'll run through these and then I will pass back over to our wonderful panelists. So does UNSW accept predicted IB grades? No, we only accept your actual grades. So that's for all admissions. We must receive those actual scores. Is the entrance score different if you choose regional campus versus city? Unfortunately, for international students, you cannot choose a regional campus. So students must attend the Sydney Kensington campus. Can a Year 11 student attempt UCAT? Yes, they can. However, please note that you must, the results only are only taken in the same year that you do apply for medicine. So if you are sitting at the year before, then please note that those scores won't be eligible for the next year. The next question I'm going to run through really quickly. Is it possible to transfer from a Bachelor of Medical Science at USyd or say any other university to second year medicine program at UNSW? No. So we call that a lateral entry scheme, and that would be eligible for students from UNSW's Bachelor of Medical Science program, and unfortunately international students are not able to apply through that pathway. So you would be applying to start the program from the first year. And last but not least, from me, are there any prerequisites? No. So you don't need to study any subject during your final year of high school. We don't have any prerequisites for any courses here at UNSW. It is recommended that you take chemistry. However, that if you don't take chemistry, it will not restrict you from entering our program. So we have an awesome question here. I'm actually going to ask all of our students to answer this one. So we'll start with Janice, move to Josh, and then go to Maverick. So studying to be a doctor is a rather big decision considering all the years that you dedicate to it. What helped you make the decision, and what keeps you motivated throughout all the years? So over to Janice.
It's actually my childhood and like my teenage experience that actually brought me to have an interest in doing medicine. But after I started like studying medicine, I actually gained even more interest, and I actually enjoy like talking to patients when I get some hospital exposure, and that is what brought me to keep me excited and also engaged in learning more about that. And you actually feel like the sense of satisfaction when you are able to like treat patients, when you see like patients coming into hospital really sick, but they actually get to leave hospital, which is like with more comfort and like relieved with their diseases and everything. So it's like a sense of pleasure to able to help patients that brought me motivated with this career.
Thanks, Janice. Over to Josh.
Thanks, Cody. Yeah, great question. So interestingly, I actually started off for much of my life super squeamish, never dreamed of doing medicine, couldn't stand the sight of blood. It was only in like year 11 and 12 really that I was like, actually, maybe this is something I do want to do. So I spoke to some doctors at Sydney Children's Hospital and got to go in and like see some, see them like talking to patients and dealing with patients, especially like little kids. And I was like, wow, this is just amazing stuff and something I want to be a part of. And I do think that was absolutely the right decision because every moment I'm in a hospital, I just feel really lucky to be there. You just really enjoy it. I've really enjoyed the problem solving aspect of it, and I've always loved science. So I think for me, those two things combined with that aspect of helping people were the reasons I wanted to do it. And you just get motivated by being fascinated by the work you're doing, really.
Super passion there from Josh. Over to Maverick to round us out with that question.
Yeah, this is a good question, but yeah, I don't have a terrific answer to this. But same as Josh, I didn't really had the urge to become a doctor when I was a kid. It was more of right because for some of you Singaporean boys out there will know that like we had to go through 2 years of conscription, right? So during that 2 years, I applied to many different university degrees, got some scholarships, and but nothing really inspired me as much as wanting to this just a context. My best friend actually got into medicine in Singapore, so I helped her open her offer letter, and that joy in her eyes really kind of inspired me and made me think maybe should I try for medicine as well. So I actually applied and I got in, but I didn't accept the offer at first. I took a gap year. I wanted to make sure that I wanted to do medicine, so I did a lot of part-time jobs in hospitals and pharmacies. Found out I really want to do medicine, and I finally made the decision to come along to Australia to do it. So what keeps me motivated, honestly, is the work that we are doing. We're actually impacting patients' life. So this is something that keeps me motivated because I want to be like a safe doctor to actually help somebody instead of harming someone. Yeah. Back to you, Cody.
Thanks so much, Maverick. I realize we have gone a little bit over time tonight, but we do have one last question that I will ask all of our panelists. And fortunately, a couple of them are well versed in our lovely final question, which is if you had one piece of advice to give to students thinking of applying to medicine, what would that be? We might start with our wonderful program authority, Dr. Sean Kennedy. We'll go to you first, and then we'll run around the students. So over to you, Sean.
I'd say don't think about it, do it. You know, if you feel it, like as Janice and Josh and Maverick just said, it's, you know, there's many motivations for why you want to do medicine, but there's unlimited motivations. And so if you're truly motivated, and you know you are, then apply. And then if you don't get in to the place you want to get in, don't get disheartened. There are many options, many different pathways to becoming a doctor or to working in the health system.
Thanks, Sean, for that. We might throw over to Janice now. She can take us through her advice for medicine.
Yep, thank you. So my one piece is like, if you are passionate and thinking about doing medicine, just apply it. You'll never know whether you'll be rejected or probably accepted. So just try your best and stay calm. If you just failed, don't worry. You'll always find another pathway to medicine.
Really great advice there. We might throw to Maverick next and end with Josh.
Yep, so just one advice is to, if you have the slightest interest, just try to apply, and and you never know what might happen in the future. So just do it.
Just do it. I love that. Josh, to round us out, what's your piece of advice?
Yeah, my piece of advice would definitely be it's worth it. I can imagine a lot of you guys are working super hard right now, you know, getting towards the pointy end of your schooling. So definitely keep working hard because it's absolutely worth it to get here, but do take care of yourselves. Make sure, you know, you follow your passions, not only for your mental health, but it will help you with getting into medicine. And then once you're here, but yeah, once you are here, it's such a lovely community. Don't be nervous because you'll be so welcomed, and yeah, get keen for it.
Thank you for that, Josh. So that rounds out our Q&A component for this evening and our webinar for this evening as well. So make sure that you stay connected with us here at UNSW. You can head to that link on the screen there to stay in the loop. So you'll be the first to know about our information evenings, open and info days, and those key application dates there. So I would just like to say thank you so much for all of our panelists for joining us today, and Nick, who wasn't joining our panel, but for speaking as well. If you do have any more questions, you can contact the Future Students Office. We have our inquiries team, which are a wealth of knowledge for all things medicine and all things UNSW, so they'll be able to help you out with anything that you need. You can connect with us on socials as well via the links there. So thank you so much for coming and joining us this evening. We really hope to be seeing you on campus here at UNSW shortly. Thank you.
You're the person the world needs. Life is changing and the future is uncertain. You may not know how or why yet, but you know you're here to make a difference. You're not waiting for the universe to give you the answers. You're finding them for yourself. Challenging echoes with evidence. Few people have great ideas. Even fewer make them happen. It takes a dreamer, an explorer, a researcher, a leader, a thinker. It takes someone like